Right here. All right, before we start the press conference, a little word of introduction. We didn't have enough room at the table, so we have three of the producers in the front row. We have Scott McGee, Mike Spreader, and Miriam Schroeder. At the table next to me is the producer, David Siegel. The director of photography, José Dezé. The co-writer, Mauricio Zacarias. At the other side of the table, the production designer, Tommy Love. The costume designer, Megan Gray. He plays Vincent Lucerford. Tom Sturridge. Rami Malek. And Monsieur le réalisateur, Ira Sachs. Okay, Ira, Mauricio, I'm going to start with you guys with a pretty simple question. I know that you guys are working on this one for a very long time now. Why? What was the starting point? Why did you want to tell the Jimmy story?
Because we lived it. Mauricio and I met 15 years ago, and both of us were, I guess in a way, we're survivors of that time. And also we remembered so much about it that maybe other people couldn't feel. It took us 15 years and 6 films to get to the point in which we felt like we could tell this story. I think our intention was to really recall that, of course, it was a very dark period. It was a period of loss and great sadness, but there was also this collective spirit of filled with art, filled with joy, filled with pain. We had so much that we wanted to convey in that conflict between what was lost and what existed. But it just took a long time for us to be ready and have a perspective on the story we wanted to tell.
Yeah, it was when we met and we started talking about working together. That story was the first story that connected us, and we knew we wanted to make a film about those days. But I think intuitively we understood that we needed time for it, and we needed the perspective of maybe 10 years or more. So we just kept making the other films, and it just felt that this was the right time for this one.
David, when did you start hearing about it? When did you start working with Ira and Mauricio on it?
Is this on? Ira has been a close friend of Scott McGee, my writing and directing partner, for 25 years, something like that. So we're always in contact and, cheering him on and his work. And we heard about this project maybe 2 years ago now, something like that. And it felt so organic for us to be able to work with Ira after being colleagues with him for so long. We're admirers, and the idea was so strong, and the script was so good, and the ideas for the production were so strong. We just thought it was something that we really wanted to be involved with.
Ira, you said it very well. It was a best of time. It was a worst of time. It was a very special moment in our culture and in our history. And the movie recreates that very, very, very well. So it's a question for all the technicians at the table and the actors too. How, first of all, to recreate that in new field for the technician and for the actors, how to dive into this time, how to dive into this world. Let's start with you, Tommy.
I think we were pulling a lot from the artists who were living in this time. Ira introduced us all to this great photographer, Alan Frame, who had these amazing books that photographed and captured this time really well, and I think a lot of the color came from that. They're very vibrant. I think it was a big costume reference as well.
Yeah, we referenced a lot all of those photos, and I think Ira was able to give us such a deep, wealth of information and references for us to dive into. And then between Jose and Ira, Tommy, and I working on a color and how to either lean into everyone being in the same space or someone feel more quiet or more loud, and how it all was just interchangeable. But also feeling a bit, it was the 80s, but we also wanted to feel a bit timeless as well.
Jose?
Yes, we had, because of Ira's sense of community, I think we really worked well together with production design, costume, and light, which is a bit of the la trinité. And besides that, there was photos, of course, but a lot of film reference also. Don't try to copy. We never copy, but it's more you get a general mood. And it all feels very organic after. But also a lot of preparation, even though our preparation was very, very short.
Not enough.
But we worked a lot on that.
Actors, who wants to take this one? Monsieur? About diving into this time.
Did you say Monsieur or Luther? Sorry.
Monsieur, one of you, which one wants to take this?
I would say my lifeline throughout the film was my communication with Ira. It was this incredible cinematic library of the history of cinema, the history of the period. His life in general just spoke volumes. I mean, when Ira speaks, he's someone you listen to because of there's an intelligence and emotional empathy that emanates immediately from his soul, and there's a kindness that you can feel lights you through his eyes, and so you feel as though you're getting all this information, but it impacts you in such a visceral way because it's coming from a man who has lived, who has seen, who has enjoyed all of life in every measure and seen tragedy in so many ways as well. So if a reference came from Ira, it held such extraordinary weight to it, and so many did. And so I kept going back to him and back to him and back to him because I felt like I had a treasure and I didn't want it snatched away from me.
Tom, was it the same?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, as Jose says, it did feel like a delicate and organic process. Ira, over time, would just slowly share things with us, be it a piece of cinema, a book, an image. I mean, the thing that was very important to me was when you sent me Borrowed Time by Paul Monette. There was... But the other strange thing, though, is that it was also the kind of the non-literal connections that were really important. Ira asked me to watch Chantal Akerman film Je tu il elle. I remember opening night for Cassavetes. You sent me the Maurice Pialat Van Gogh. And these are films that have not a literal connection to our story, but we slowly had an understanding of the kind of cinematic grammar that you were living in, and that was an access to a truth as well.
Luther?
I'd like to add Nelson Sullivan, who was artist and filmmaker in New York, documented downtown New York throughout the late 70s through the 80s, and filmed just his friends and the clubs, and there's thousands of hours of these videos, and they were all on YouTube, and we watched a lot of that. And actually, the song I play on the piano, Ira sent me this video of Nelson playing the piano, and he was like, "We can't find out what this is, but can you learn it?" So then I was like watching his hands and trying to work out, and then that's the song I played in that scene, which I think is a very special detail that kind of, yeah, there's a lot of that in the film. Details from, it's very rich. Yeah.
I think it was important for us to make a film that was true to the past, but it was also, as you see by this group of people, and really what it felt like on set is that we were making a film in the present. And I think the continuity between New York in the 70s and 80s and 90s to today is true and still exists, and it includes the loss of Nelson and Paul Manette, and you know, for me, there's a long, long list of people that I feel like I'm trying to kind of breathe through and still feel very connected with. Peter Hujar, of course. But I think we also had no rules about period. Period was just a direction. It wasn't a cage in any way.
All right, I think we have a question right here.
Hello. Hi, Ira. How are you?
Hi, good to see you.
Rami, I have a question for both of you. As I told Ira the other day, when he'd mentioned Ron Vorter at the best thing I've ever seen was LSD, The High Points by the Wooster Group at the Adelaide Festival. Willem Dafoe was in it, but it was Ron Vorter's show.
Yeah.
And then I met him in later for Roy Cohn-Jack Smith when he was seriously ill with his partner, by the way. Right. And they were still fighting to, he wasn't going to give up until the very last moment. And I have a feeling that that's a bit like your character, Rami. He was going to enjoy life right until it was taken away from him. Could you comment on that, and how much is it? Could you comment on Ron Vorter, because I just think he's one of the best ever.
How much Ron Vorter did we watch? Everything.
Yeah. I mean, Ron was someone that I had a crush on. Really?
Did you really?
Yes. From the audience, I'm blushing.
No, and a lot of other people too.
Yeah, meaning a lot of people had a crush on Ron. Not that I had a crush on everybody. But Ron was a member of the Wooster Group, which is a downtown experimental theater run by Elizabeth Lecomte. It's a bit the model for the Mechanicals in our film. A group of people who come together over years to make art and to make theater. We went down a really kind of steep rabbit hole of Ron's life, and also found some beautiful backstage footage of Ron that we incorporated into the script in certain moments. But I will say that there's a kind of beautiful metaphor in his life, is that he did this play, Roy Cohn-Jack Smith. He was very ill at the time, but he just loved being on stage. So he thought he did do one more production, which was a play called Philoctetes, which is a Greek story about a man in the military who's poisoned, knows he's going to die, and takes himself off to an island. And Ron took this play to Belgium, and he started to perform it. He was covered with Kaposi sarcoma at the time, which he was very comfortable, and it was part of the performance was his body. And he couldn't finish the production, and he ended up, Susan Sontag called him, he went to Bellagio, he was very ill, he needed to get back to New York, he got on a plane, and he died on the plane on the way back to the city. And to me, it's a breathtaking sort of description of a man who's committed and feels he cannot breathe without making.
And Rami, could you say something?
Yeah, I was always fascinated by the Wooster Group and Willem Dafoe, and then to think of Willem being in awe of Ron said so much to me. That really spoke to me. And so I immersed myself in just watching all things Ron as well, and just was utterly fascinated by his refusal to give up. And so I kept thinking about this stubborn refusal to disappear for Jimmy all throughout. And of course there's an undertone of death throughout the film, but predominantly it's about living. And I think Jimmy is a human being who's bursting with life. He's sharing the greatest intimacy in his relationships, in his love, in his friendships, in his family, and extraordinarily so in his work. And just that commitment to creativity, to creating, it's almost just a form of absolute survival, and you can almost see it when you're watching Ron or anyone from that period. I mean, reading Borrowed Time as well. It all somehow lived, I think, inside all of us to a point where we didn't have to play anything. Once you know started to discover what actually happened in that period, it exists within, and you almost want to exude as much joy as a performer as you can. So it was art imitating a past life rather than trying to really inhabit someone else. It was inhabiting itself all the while, which was so kind of fluid and beautiful, and I mean, you've said this before, but the movie almost told us what it wanted to be at times.
Yeah. I want to just say that the film is not a biography in any way. Ron is in a list of people that we tried to translate into a character who is Rami Malek and played by Rami Malek. And I say that because I think ultimately, Tom, Luther, I try to make films in which the person is the character. Ultimately, there could be no other Jimmy George than the one that exists in Rami Malek. So there is Ron, but there's also Ethel Eichelberger, there's Frank Maya, there's so many people that this film sort of remembers, but also we become something new in the making of the film.
All right, we have a question over there.
Oh, hi, Jada Yuan from The Hollywood Reporter. Hi. Congratulations on the film. And this is for Ira, Rami, anyone else who wants to answer it. You made a movie that is about a time when the US government largely abandoned gay men. And we are now in a time when the US Supreme Court overturned protections against conversion therapy, when President Trump, in his first act of office, basically said there were only two genders and signed an executive order to that. So could you please speak more about this connection between the past and the present, and how you see the connection between what you lived through, what you made a movie about, and now?
Yeah, I mean, I can take that.
I can take it.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I can start by just saying, I don't know, I think I was a member of ACT UP, which was the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, and the motto of ACT UP is silence equals death. And I think in a way to tell stories is actually quite difficult, and to find the space in which a story like this exists is a fight. But we hope that in some ways the fight disappears, but the rage is in this film. And I specifically think of Rami's performance of Look What They Done to My Song, Ma, which is so filled with layers of many different things, including loss, including beauty, but also of anger. And there is an anger that I think all of us who lived during that time and today really feel. But that's part of the kind of energy of that time, and I hope today also.
Anybody else? No? Okay, I think we have.
Hello. Yeah, Judith De Silva, Arise Play, Nigeria. My question is for Tom. Your character, quite literally, is the poster child for unwavering and unconditional love. And while I believe in that, there were moments in the film where I wanted to climb into the screen and just shake him and say, please prioritize yourself and be a little bit selfish. But he never does that. It's always Jimmy. So I wondered for you as an actor, where does the line exist between your instincts as a person and your duty as an actor, so that in the process of harvesting truth from the character on the script to project that truth onto the screen to the audience, you can paint a portrait of a man that, while the audience may struggle to understand his choices, we holistically understand him as a man?
The first thing I want to say is in talking about Ron, I want to remember Greg Merton, his partner, who was an extraordinary man, and you know interviews that he's given about Ron informed an enormous amount of how I thought about Dennis. And the backstage films that you speak of also have a very particular influence on our relationship in the film. So I just want to remember him. And I think the strange thing that happened when I read the script was how close it felt to me, Dennis. So when you propose that he might have ideas or ways of loving that I don't understand, I don't think that's true. I really did understand him. I felt that something that's very unexamined, at least in my observation of cinema, is the relationship between the artist and the non-artist, the love between those two people, and the profound creativity that loving an artist requires, that is often perceived as passive, but actually requires enormous imagination to allow the person you love to express themselves, to create and nurture an environment where they can be the fullest version of who they are. And I think that that is a vocation and something to believe in and be inspired by and devote yourself to. And that's what I found in him and in myself.
We got a question right here, Rodrigo.
Hi, question here. Rodrigo Fonseca, Correio da Manhã. Maurício Zacarias, question to you. I have the sensation that throughout your partnership with Ira, desire is always the basis of the stories. And here is also, in a very particular and brave way, a story about desire as well. Desire to survive. I would like to understand not only the way you work together, but how describing desire in that universe. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Obrigado, Rodrigo. The way we work together is, I think there's a lot of pleasure in being together. That's why this partnership has worked for so long. We've been working together for 15 years. And we usually, when we start working on a new project, we talk about everything but the project. We gossip a lot. We talk about, people that we know and what's happening. And then slowly we start to watch movies together and talk about the latest play that we saw that we liked. And we start to get inspiration from everything that's around our lives. And then, when we start to create the characters and start to create situations together, but it's always very pleasurable, and I think that, particularly in this movie, it was from the beginning. It was intention of writing a film about a person who really not even wants to live. He's just living. He just wakes up and does what he has to do on that day. He goes to work, he loves, he has sex, he fights. More important than think about what's going to happen in the near future. And I think that that's what drives, to me, when I was writing the character of Jimmy, for us, when we were writing it, it was that desire to live more than anything. Yeah.
I just, excuse me, you said about the pleasure we have together, which is real, including this moment. Like, we're here together, and I think that pleasure is something that I hope comes through with the films. It's a really central part of what I love about cinema, which is pleasure. And so that the films, we really try to make vessels to contain all the things that we think of as pleasurable. And that includes what you describe, it includes want. Want is also a form of plot, right? Like, as soon as you want, then there is the suspense whether you will have. And I think for me, that is really central to films that have a digressive nature, but there's actually a central question of, and in this film, will Jimmy learn his lines? Like, that's the film. right? And in a way, you need to know that there is something at stake that I think, and I think about 30 cinema a lot, which is very simple. What is the line that the film follows?
Gentlemen.
Marc Cassivi from La Presse in Canada. Maybe a follow-up to that. I was wondering how you got interested in the play, the Michel Tremblay play that the troupe decides to put on, and were you also interested in the film that André Brassard made from that play, which was in competition in Cannes in 1974? So maybe just talk about that. And did Josie have anything to do with it? Because she's from Quebec. No.
It was all Ira.
It was so in '89. I made my first film. I was in Toronto and I saw a screening of Il était une fois dans l'Est, which is the film by André Brassard from the plays of Michel Tremblay, and I always remembered it, and it had disappeared. It is not available pretty much anywhere, but we're working to change that now. And I saw the film, and really what it struck me was it was a bit like if Fassbinder had made Nashville. And so when I was trying to figure out, it was actually the hardest part for me of the writing of the film.
And it was the less part.
Yeah, it was. There was a big gap in the script because there was this art piece in the middle, but we didn't know what it was, and everybody believed that it would just exist, and I knew it had to be to exist. So I really, when I started talking and working with Rami, and I thought of that film, and I saw images of the character of Carmen, I thought, wait a minute, there's something here. And there's something really unusual, but also for me, as someone who was involved in experimental theater as a young person, a kind of postmodern attachment to this material that I thought could be true to the Mechanicals, the theater group in the film. And then there was this crazy belief, that's what I kept thinking that all these people agreed that there was a reason that we would make a film in 2026 about a movie that was about a play that was really made into a movie in 1974 that no one had heard of, but that we were going to recreate that, but only in pieces. and I felt like, yeah, but that is kind of like, it was actually a great allegory for sort of what happens and what you feel is a kind of trust that this group of people had for me as an artist, as they all said yes to that proposition. And that's the relationship to this beautiful film.
I've got a question in the middle. Yeah.
Hi, Lina Bassi, the Night TV Ukraine. I enjoyed it enormously yesterday watching the film from the director I love. And I think your talent enabled you to show so much beauty and so much desire and intimacy through the just to showing slice of life. I'm just wondering what is your secret, and I think the music plays a big role in it, and I would like to ask you to talk about it, the choice of your music, and how do you work with the music during the creating your film. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, I guess I don't know if there's a secret, but it is important to have a story to tell. In a way, having a story and having stakes allows you to move in somewhat digressive mode, because there is something always that holds the audience close to the film, their curiosity about what's going to happen. For Mauricio and I, we've often worked with a kind of conversation with previous movies that become somehow guiding lights for us in terms of making our work. In this film, it was Piala's Van Gogh, which is an extraordinary film about the last 4 months of the artist Van Gogh in Arles, as you learn, is nearing the end of his life, but in the process has so much experience. So dance, art, sex, romance, great food. There's like there's a kind of gluttonous amount of experience within this brief time that is sort of the moments before his passing. So that, in a way, was kind of a backbone that gave us the ability to then create universes, one after the other, that tell that story. And music, you want to talk?
No, I was just going to say that All That Jazz was another film
Yeah.
that was very important for us in this project. So the way that the music is intertwined narratively, it pushes somehow, it's not just a song happening in the movie, it's moving the narrative forward.
I also think music for me, and I think everyone would probably recognize this, is a really direct, it's a Madeline, right? It's a direct line to a memory or the past. And I remember that period in my life because of the Talking Heads and because of Bo Diddley and because of Broadway show tunes, which were very important to me. So I think there's a way, and I remember actually putting music on and playing it over and over and over. So the music, in a way, is an immediate recollection of time.
All right, right in, Zara.
It's Anastasia. We've been watching Russian independent media. Thank you very much for this incredible movie. It was really moving and touching. Definitely one of the best in the competition, not only. So the question, for Ira, but for all of you guys. Many films about AIDS crisis are centered on tragedy and loss mostly, but your film is full of desire and joy and humor. At the same time, your New York feels not just as a setting, but like a disappearing cultural memory. Was it important for you to preserve the vitality and emotional texture of this world, not only its pain, but also the life and energy of a city and community that no longer exists or disappearing? Thank you very much.
I guess I would just say New York has suffered, and there was a disappearance of a generation of artists, specifically in the 70s and 80s, who made the city so vibrant, but it has not disappeared. The city is still filled with people and faces, and also it still attracts the most ambitious artists that I know. It is filled with people who want to express themselves through creative means. I started and am a part of an organization called Queer Art, and we support artists in film, visual arts, performance, and literature, but basically we support the idea of creating community. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of 19 and 20 and 25 and 28 and 30-year-old. There are a lot of young people who are gravitating the city with a burning need to tell things and to make art and to have their story be seen. So it's kind of that, I think, which brings the film that vibrancy, because that's the people that I cast in this movie. Those are the faces that you see in this film, including these three. But every face has a story in this film.
A gentleman in the middle.
Hello. Congratulations for the film, to all of you. It was very nice and I would say cozy in a way. So my question is to Mr. Malek. I found something from your Freddie in your Jimmy, especially when he sang at the parents' party. So what do you find there is common between the two characters you played, and why are they so different in the same way? And what about another Oscar?
What about them what? What was
another Oscar?
Academy Award.
Oh. Well, not if it's a cozy film. They are. At first, when I read the script, I said, "Oh, I can't do this. There's too many similarities. It could be problematic." There was a certain sense of fear, and I started to really think about what I was afraid of. Was it the similarities? Was it the singing? Was it obviously what was going on in the period? And the fear was, I knew I had to address the fear. If there's anything Freddie taught me, was address the fear. But if there's anything I learned from Ira as well, is that he makes unique cinema unlike any other. And I knew I was in extraordinary hands, and that if he was choosing me, I could rely on him, not only to depend on him throughout the film, but to elevate it, to push myself, to force myself, to race into that fire. And when I raced into it, I started to discover that these were men that were similar, but they were also worlds apart. I mean, you have an icon, a legend in Freddie, who was really had a destination, whereas Jimmy is just searching for creativity and love and intimacy and joy and pleasure in every moment. And he can sing. Does he sing as well as Freddie? No. Is he if he needs to learn kabuki, he's going to throw himself into it and into Onagata, and I did. Was it ever going to be perfect? Didn't have to be. It was just about this element of creating and living and joy. And New York in that period was a very different time. I mean, I could see Jimmy just going to, these downtown shows, seeing, Frank Maya at the time, or an entirely different experience of a man in that period. And so you can draw similarities, but I see them as two radically different figures altogether, especially as I have some more distance from it.
I want to say that one of the things, I love how you describe Jimmy specifically as someone who does have ambition, but it's almost internal ambition, as opposed to someone like Freddie who's looking for external. And what strikes me about that is why I look at this period of New York with such, I get so much from these people, because there was a courage to do things because they wanted to impress the person who lived next door to them. Right? They did it in a very local way. There was not this fantasy of kind of globalization. It was a very local time. And I think, for me, thinking about being as ambitious as someone like Jimmy is, but with the idea of proving things for yourself, and for the artist who lives in the hall next door to you, who lives just around the corner, this is something which in a way gives me a kind of courage. Because you need to aim small in a certain way, and you need to aim into yourself.
And there are a lot of people who aspire to be someone like Freddie Mercury. There are a lot of artists in the world who don't get to that level, but still have an immense, an abundance of talent and skill and a world to offer that just maybe is unseen by the masses, but communally gets some recognition, or they find a way to recognize it in amongst themselves, and perhaps that can be almost as gratifying. And I think that was for Jimmy in a sense.
We imagined that Jimmy's goal, or maybe it actually had happened, would be to be on the cover of the Village Voice.
Right. He said he might have a profile in the New York Times, but he really could be on the cover of the Village Voice.
All right, Marcus.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Marcus from OnePress TV from Sweden. I want to ask Rami Malek, how did you come in contact with this project, and what made you want to be part of the movie?
We could talk about this together, but I've just been an admirer of Ira's for so many years and have asked my agent to put me in touch, and we finally did, and I think we hit it off straight away. I'll be honest, I mean, people often say, oh, after the Oscar, you just kind of get offered things. It's not the case. We were having a meeting, we were having a discussion, and kind of just, I think, getting a feel for one another to see if this could actually work. And I just had my fingers crossed that it would and that he would appreciate me.
Well, I think for me, I knew that with a film like this, you needed someone in the middle who had a certain kind of mystery, a certain kind of potential for the unexpected, but also truly a star quality, because there is a whole universe which revolves around Jimmy and Rami in the film.
A cozy star.
No, but a star is someone who emits light and also asks to be seen. And I think that is really something that is truly cinematic, and it's a quality that Rami has. I've been thinking a lot about Cassavetes actors, because I think in some ways all three of you, I never was certain in any moment, which is the one thing I ask, that I don't know what you're going to do. And I think that's a quality that you all kind of trusted in the situation, and in that there is the suspense of what's going to happen within a second. And I think Rami, I don't know, I've been thinking about Peter Falk for some reason, because I think with Peter Falk, you never know if he's going to jump over the counter as he does in Mikey and Nicky. You know, you don't know what kind of, there's a danger there that I think is really important for acting.
The cozy detective. Sorry, I'll stop now.
Monsieur le réalisateur, ladies, gentlemen, I only have one more thing to say, but please go.
I will say this. We're talking about these performances. Every time I was on set and I had an interaction with any one of these lovely human beings sitting next to me, I honestly had to take a beat, because there was a naturalism and a beauty that they all exuded in the moment that it removed this kind of artifice of acting from anything we were doing. There was a moment when we first met, Tom and I, we'd known each other for quite some time, but in the middle of, we were in a pub in London, in the middle of our evening, he put his hand on top of mine, and I immediately felt nurtured. I thought, oh, that's it. This man will take care of me. And in that moment, it was moments like that, these delicate moments of intimacy, eye contact, just, you know, these small idiosyncrasies that these tremendous actors give. And José captures, I mean, your eye behind that lens, you know, almost anticipate before we're doing something where it's going, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And you know, we had I think the grounding of Tommy and Megan's work that was, you know, just put us in a place where we could be that truthful, we could take all those risks. And I thank the producers as well for giving this opportunity. And you know, Rebecca's not here, but the intimacy, or Eben, but Rebecca, you just fall in love with as a sister, as a human being. I mean, you feel we don't have that much time together, but the relationship there exists in every way. And if ever there was, you know, this role came for me with quite a bit of insecurity at times, and so I was leaning on everyone, and I would ask you for every reference in the world, and it would be delivered. In the middle of the night, a lot. Yeah. Sorry, but Miriam Schroeder, our producer as well, was fielding those calls in the middle of the night as well, and so I have to thank you tremendously as well. And yeah, we're also here to celebrate women in film. So thank you, and thank you, thank you.
I just want to add one thing. 25 companies said no, and David, Scott, and Mike from Big Creek said yes. I mean, so just to say these stories are not easy to get made, and I'm really so grateful. And then I just want to talk about my relationship with José for a minute, because I think it's kind of the, it's our second film. We made a film called Passages a few years ago, and I feel that in José I have found, I can't say my eye because there's 4 eyes, but I can say the heart of cinema that I love, I feel I share with José, and in the images that we make together. So I'm so grateful for you.
Well, as I was saying, ladies and gentlemen, merci beaucoup.